Continue to get together and study tonight. And we thank you for the chance to talk with each other and to have fellowship. We also thank you for Jesus and for grace and for forgiveness. We ask you to bless our time studying 2 Samuel tonight. We also ask you to be with families and people that are hurting. The Galloways in the loss of Sherry's mom, and George, and and his boys and daughters-in-law in the loss of Linda. Also ask you to bless all those that are grieving and those that have had recent loss. We ask you to be with them and give them strength and give them comfort. We ask you to be with our sick as well, and especially with Bill today as he's fine. He's stronger and making progress, but he's got a long and a very, very difficult road ahead. So be with him, keep him strong. We ask you to bless our time, and we thank you. In Christ's name, amen. All right. So last week I had 2 slides and could barely handle it, but I've had some tutoring since then. So this is the scary part is I can remember when I was the new guy on the job, and they were like, "Oh, you're the youngest guy. You're now in charge of tech. Tell us which computers to buy." And I got to introduce a guy to what was called a hard disk instead of the floppy disk. He said, "There's something wrong with the machine. It's just like popping up the screen." I'm like, "No, that's how it works now when you actually have a faster disk." Okay. We did an overview, and we talked about the first chapter of 2 Samuel last week. Now, what do you remember from that? Well, what do I remember from that? Let me get my, there were a couple of themes that we talked about. One of them is the arcs in David's life. This book is about David, basically, as we said. There are arcs in David's life. He's, at the beginning of 2 Samuel, he's about as low as you can get. He's not quite as low because he's just rescued his wives, and gotten them back from the Amalekites. And he's just taken a whole bunch of spoils from the Amalekites and brought them back to the Philistine city that the king of Gath had given him to live in. That's where he was when he found out Saul was dead, right? And that's what we talked about last week, is his grieving for Saul and also his treatment of the guy who, by his own testimony, said that he had been the one to kill Saul. So that was one. There are lots of ups and downs in the arc of David's life in 1 Samuel and in 2 Samuel. And the other one is that David is a lot of things. He's a lot of special things and a lot of things that are very not so special, the kind of things that all of us humans are subject to. I mean, maybe murder and adultery we're not all guilty of murder and adultery, but we all have problems. But he is also the man after God's own heart, and that's what we're going to do today. Is get through chapter. We're going to go look at chapter 2, 3, and 4, and that's going to basically get David from near rock bottom to about to be anointed as king of a united kingdom of Israel and the rest of what we think of Israel and Judah. Well, he's about to be anointed in both of those, but it is not going to be an easy road. So I worked for a guy back at Georgia Tech who was a very wise gentleman. He was way older than me. This was in I was 23, 24. So this is 1980, 81, and he was accepting a job to be dean of the chemistry department. And I thought, oh my goodness, he's supposed to be an administrator. He's a brilliant researcher, but he's not an administrator. He can't find his way. His piles of papers here, and there's nothing. He's going to be in trouble. And he told me, I did not say any of that, but he told me something that I've heard many times in many different ways since then. He says, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You know why the politics are so dirty in faculty in the faculty and academia?" He says, "Because the stakes are so small." Now, when we're thinking about David today, it is not small stakes. It's very big stakes. But as we go through these chapters, and as you know from your history of this country and other countries, civil wars are perhaps among the nastiest kinds of wars there are. I would ask you to think about why that might be. And we'll talk about it at the end a little bit too, but be thinking on, why is it that they're so nasty? You can come up with a lot of reasons, and we're going to get some reasons, I think, from the text as well. So that's one thing. It's got a lot to do with what's going on, but it's probably not the most important thing that's going on. The other thing we talked about, last week, is you got to look at 2 Samuel in context. And the first piece of context you got to have is that this is the Word of God. At least that's the first thing I'm going to bring to it as I'm looking at it. I believe that it's inspired from God, and if it was not what God wanted, it would not be what we're reading. But there's an awful lot of, as we said, good and bad that happens with David. I do want to jump back to 1 Samuel for a moment, because I want to remind you, let me ask a question. Now, this one's a serious question. How many times was David anointed in the Bible?
I think at least twice, at least.
You're right, at least twice. Let me read you about the first one. 1 Samuel 13 and 11 and following. I can't read you all of it because I don't want to read all that much. But remember that Samuel was told by God, "I'm kind of done with the way Saul is behaving. We're going to have another king." And God tells him to go to Jesse and look at his sons. So Samuel has been to Jesse, and he's looked at 7 sons, and none of them are acceptable to God. So the question for Jesse is, are all your sons here? Then Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains," Jesse said, "there remains yet the youngest, but he, behold, is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes here." And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. So Samuel left. He needed a cover to go out to see Jesse, because he was afraid that Saul would kill him for going out to do something like this. And so I forget what the cover was. There was a livestock kind of thing involved. That was why he was there. So they didn't publicize this, but David and his 7 brothers and his dad and the household knew that this was God's anointed. It's going to be years, right? We got a lot of things to happen to David before the end of 1 Samuel that we are not even really going to talk about. But tonight, he's going to get anointed again. But this is the one I don't even remember. I knew that he got anointed to be king over all of Israel, but he gets anointed again tonight. Okay. What else did we talk about David that he did over and over again to show probably why this is true? Of course, one, he knows God anointed him and the Spirit of God came on him. So here we are, first 4 verses of 2 Samuel. I'm sorry, of 2nd chapter, because we're David's executed the young man who had claimed to kill Saul. He has gotten back, he got his family and his goods back together there in Ziklag. Oh, by the way, let's do this. Okay. So just for information here, here's where David's based these days. And it is part of Philistia, or Gaza today, right? And that's the town that they gave him. It's somewhere in that general area. Here's the capital of the tribe of Judah. Here's where we're going to have a battle in a little bit. Jerusalem's there. One thing to think about in this, there's a 7-year war that's going to happen between David and the family of Saul, the guy who was king for part of that time over the northern part of Israel, is one of Saul's sons named Ishbosheth. But interesting thing is, look at the scale. This is 20 miles. So Ziklag is 20 miles away from Hebron, sorry. And looks like it's less than 20 miles to Bethlehem and Jerusalem from there. And, it's just, things are tight. You can walk to a place in a day if you're in a hurry. You can run home from losing a battle in a day if you're in a hurry. So, 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1. After this, David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? He's down here with his family. He's just gotten his family back from some of the Amalekites and had a victory over them. And Saul, the reason he was in Philistia in the first place, was dead. So he asked God, what should I do? Shall I go up to any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, go up. David said, to which shall I go? And he said, to Hebron. So David went up there, and his 2 wives also, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. And David brought up his men who were with him, every one with his household, and they lived in the towns of Hebron, and the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. So basically king of the tribe of Judah, or boss of the tribe of Judah, but king, whatever. So the other question that's important for tonight, or one way to look at this civil war, is to whom does this land belong to? Is a question that's going to get asked by a not very nice person, actually. But that's the important question. And I've got sort of a timeline of everything that happens in these chapters. Blue is David's actions. Red is the actions of the Saul's family's team. And purple is stuff that's a little confused. Maybe it's both sides, or somebody that's in the process of switching sides. So David came back to home base. He executed that Amalekite youth, moved his people to Hebron, anointed king of Judah. And then David does something. He hears that Saul's body and that of Jonathan had been taken and nailed into the wall of a Philistine city. And some folks from Jabesh Gilead got men that's the tribe of Manasseh there, but they're very tight with the Benjamites, so that means Saul's people. They came down, actually came over, because the Philistine city would have been in here. The battle that Saul lost was at a mountain up north of the Sea of Galilee. And that's where Saul died. So that's like several days to get that message down, right? Because this is 100 miles in a time when the fastest thing you could do was walk or ride a horse, maybe, but nobody had horses much. So he heard that the men of Jabesh Gilead had come over during the night to the Philistine city and taken the bodies of the Israelites who were left on display there, Saul and his son, and took them home and buried them. So David So Saul is David's enemy for the last 10 years at least. He's been persecuting David, but David says to the guys that did it, a blessing on you for doing this, and I'm now the ruler of Judah, and I look upon you with favor. Right? God favors you too, because you did the right thing. Now, you could look at this as, okay, this is a politician. He's trying to get in with other people. You could also look at it as, this is the guy who always does what he thinks God wants him to do, and honored God's anointed, even when God's anointed was doing things that were wrong. And that's the way I'm looking at it. And that's the way 2 Samuel looks at it. That's why this is it's just stuck there in the middle of that. David's going about his business and he does that now. But the text says that David spent 7 years in Hebron as the ruler of the tribe of Judah. He also had 6 kids and married a bunch more wives while he was there. But while he was there, it was pushing back and forth with people of Saul's relatives or his former commanders and people that supported Saul. And so in 2 Samuel 2:8, chapter, the 18th verse, it says, Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, which is right there. And made him king over Gilead and the Azarites and Jezreel and Ephraim and Benjamin on all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned for 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David, and the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. I don't think that means that David was king 7 years and 6 months when Ishbosheth became king of Israel. I think that means Ishbosheth, somewhere in there during the time David's in Hebron, Abner goes up and makes him king. And they begin to talk about still in chapter 20, still in chapter 2, the wars or the problems between the two sides are going on, and Abner suggests that both sides bring 12 champions to this town of Gibeah, which is sort of it's in between where he's the king and where David's the king. Excuse me, I apologize. And says, let's see who's better. And the text, some of the folks say, the text may be corrupted. And I admit I can't quite follow it completely, that's for sure. But apparently they talk about how the 12, the Abner and Joab, Abner being the general for Saul's people and Joab being David's, they're sitting around talking, and they say, well, why don't yours and ours fight? And you can't tell if it's one by one, one-on-one, or if it's just all 12 from each side goes at once. But it says they all fall down and stab each other. And the name of the field from now on is the Field of Blades. So that sounds like it could be all the champions killed each other. Or it could be that Joab's champions mostly won against Abner. And a battle started after that. I mean, was it supposed to be an Olympic contest with nobody getting killed? Well, that's not the way it worked out. So a battle started, and Joab's forces beat Abner's and chased them out of town. And there's a story in there, but probably we should, I didn't plan to read it, but let's read it anyway. It's not a story, it's a sad thing that happens in wars. go to 2 Samuel, the second chapter. And the battle was very fierce that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. And the three sons of Zeruiah were there. That's Joab, Abishai, and Ashel. Now, Ashel was as swift of foot as a wild gazelle, and Ashel pursued Abner, and as he went, and he turned neither to the right hand nor to the left, following Abner. Then Abner looked behind him and said, "Is it you, Ashel?" And he answered, "It is I." Abner said to him, "Turn aside to your right hand or to your left, and seize one of the young men, and take his armor." Now, you could look at that and say, oh, he's just telling him, don't bother me, kill somebody else. But probably that's not it. He probably just doesn't want to kill the guy. He's not going to let him kill him, but he just doesn't want to kill him. Abner said to him, "Turn aside to your right hand or to your left, and seize one of the young men, and take his spoil, his armor, his stuff." But Ashel would not turn aside from following him, and Abner said again to Ashel, "Turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How could I lift up my face to your brother Joab?" But he refused to turn aside. Therefore Abner struck him in the stomach with the butt of his spear, so that the spear came out of his back, and he fell there and he died where he was. And all who came to the place where Ashel had fallen and died stood still. So we're in a rout. They're chasing after them. People are dying. It turns out for this battle, when they took count afterwards, both sides, when one side got back to Mahanaim and the other one got back to Hebron, the people from Judah had lost 19 people, and they'd lost over 300 from the folks from the northern part of Israel. But the part I wanted us to look at, but Joab and Abishai pursued Abner. That's Joab and Joab's other brother, the one that's not dead. Pursued Abner. And as the sun was going down, they came to the hill of Ammah, which lies before Giah, and on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon, none of which are on my map. Then Abner called to the people of Benjamin, that's Saul's tribe, that's where Abner's from, gathered themselves together behind Abner and became one group and took their stand on the top of a hill. Then Abner called to Joab, "Shall the sword devour forever? Do you not know that the end will be bitter? How long will it be before you tell your people to turn from the pursuit of their brothers?" And Joab said, "As God lives, if you had not spoken, surely the men would not have given up the pursuit of your brothers till morning." So Joab blew his trumpet, and all the men stopped and pursued Israel no more, and nor did they fight anymore. So that is something to think about, that business of civil wars. It's when you're fighting inside your people, your countrymen, in this case, fellow Israelites, you are fighting your brothers. And when the servants of David had struck down of Benjamin 360 of Abner's men, and they took Ashel, that's Joab's brother, and buried him in the tomb of his father, which was at Bethlehem, again, Judah. And Joab and his men marched all night, and they broke dawn at Hebron. So they got back in the evening, or in the next morning. It will take longer to get back up here to Mount Mahanaim, a little longer. And and there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. And David grew stronger and stronger while the house of Saul became weaker and weaker. Now, this is what we would expect, right? This is God's anointed fighting the people who don't recognize him as being anointed. There's a lot of other ugliness that we're about to talk about. Saul had a bunch of wives and concubines as well. And when he died, at some point in there, Abner, as his general, took one of his concubines. And Ishbosheth, the son, didn't like that and spoke to Abner about it. And Abner said, look, I'm your guy, and you're talking to me about women. That was literally what it says. You're telling me about problems with women. But Abner decides, okay, I've had it with you. Or he decides, I've been on the wrong side all along. I'm going to go join David. Goes to join David. What do you think happens? Does anybody have remember this from their histories? And Abner sent messages to David on his behalf, saying, this is chapter 3, verses 12 through 16. To whom does the land belong? Make your covenant with me, and behold, my hand shall be with you to bring over all Israel to you. What does this mean? To whom does the land belong? What are the possible things Abner could be saying to David? Well, who does the land belong to?
Israel.
Yeah, Israel, God's people. It's God's land. He tells them what to do.
Isn't it so he's saying, isn't it all of our land, really?
I don't know what he's saying. He could be saying that. He could be saying, you're God's anointed. So therefore, it's you're in charge of this. That's whose land it is. Or he could be saying, it's God's land. We shouldn't be fighting like this. I'm going to help you end this mess. I don't know what the different. You read two commentators, you get three answers. But he goes on and says, make your covenant with me, and behold, my hand shall be with you to bring over all Israel to you. And David said, good, I'll make a covenant with you. But one thing I require of you, that is, you shall not see my face unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see my face. In other words, you're not even going to get in unless I see Michal, my former wife. Does anybody remember that story? I had to look this one up. Saul was trying to kill David after having given her his daughter in marriage, and she helped him escape out a window. But he was gone and out of favor, and Saul married her off to somebody else, who actually apparently loved her and had started a family with her. Then David.
That was David's first wife, isn't that right?
I think it's his. Yes, right. Wasn't counting. They weren't counting her as one of the two that he lost and found. Yeah. Then David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, give me my wife Michal, for whom I paid the bridal price of 100 foreskins of the Philistines. Remember, Saul didn't actually think David would live through collecting his bride. That would be, you kill 100 guys, you're likely to get killed. I think that was, especially if you're stopping to dismember them. Okay. Give me my wife Michal, for whom I paid the bride price of 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband Paltiel, the son of Laish. But her husband went with her, weeping after her all the way to Bahurim. Then Abner said to him, go, return. And he returned. Feels very political. Abner, prove to me that you can do what you say and that you're going to make me, that you really are going to be on my side. You're going to break with the other side in such a way that you can't, can't go back. Or maybe David just wanted his wife back. I don't know. And then Abner came. They talked. They planned. This here. Abner brings one of Saul. Abner delivers Michal's proof and plans fealty. ceremony for the rest of Israel. He starts to plan with David how everybody's going to come and proclaim David king of Israel. All Israel. 326. When Job came out of David's presence, so Job had come back. He says, I hear you had Abner in here and you just didn't kill him. You sent him away and let him go free. And David apparently said, yes. And Joab said, don't you know? He's just playing you. He's just looking to see what you're doing. He's just clocking where you go in. Just like a satellite watching, enemies somewhere. He's just figuring out how things work around here. He's going to kill you. David told him, no, that's not what's going to happen. When Job came out from David's presence, he sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back from the cistern of Sirah, which is just outside of the town of Hebron. But David did not know about it. And when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into the midst of the gate to speak with him privately. It's the gate of the city. And there he struck him in the stomach so that he died for the blood of Ashel, his brother. Afterward, when David heard of it, he said, I and my kingdom are forever guiltless before the Lord for the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. May it fall upon the head of Joab and upon all his father's house. And may the house of Joab never be without one who has a discharge, or who is leprous, or who holds a spindle, or who falls by the sword, or lacks bread, or who lacks bread. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, killed Abner because he had put their brother Ashel to death in the battle of Gibeon. And then David mourns Abner. Said Abner was an honorable guy. And told his people, tear your clothes and put on sackcloth and mourn before Abner. And King David followed the procession, the body. They buried Abner at Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king lamented for Abner, saying, should I have Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not fettered. As one falls before the wicked, you have fallen. And all the people wept over him. Then all the people came to persuade David to eat bread while it was still yet day, and David swore, saying, God, do so to me and more also if I taste bread or anything till the sun goes down. In other words, I'm in mourning, I'm not going to do anything. So all the people and all Israel understood that day that it had not been the king's will to put to death Abner the son of Ner. And the king said to his servants, do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? And I was gentle today, though anointed king. These men, these sons of Zeruiah, that's Joab, his general, and his brother, are more severe than I. The Lord repay the evildoer according to his wickedness. So what do you think? Is he talking about Joab as the evildoer? Because that's all he does is talk in this particular case. Joab is his general, and he does not do anything to Joab. He does say bad things are going to happen in your family, but he doesn't, take him out and kill him like he's done other people. So walking on through this, Joab tricks and murders Abner in Hebron. David mourns and fasts after Abner's death. And Ishbosheth loses heart after the death of Abner. Now, either that means that Abner was really planning to do David dirty, and Ishbosheth was aware of it, or Ishbosheth was just clueless in general. It's also possible. But no way to know what Abner told Ishbosheth. We don't have that. And then things are looking worse and worse for Ishbosheth, and two of Saul's former captains kill him and bring his head to David. And at this point, you probably know what David's going to do, right? You didn't need this. David executes them and buries Ishbosheth's head in the tomb of Abner, but that is exactly what happened. So he actually desecrated their bodies, cut off their hands, and didn't allow them to be properly buried because he was very upset at their killing of one of Saul's children. So David's a lot of things. Is he human? Obviously, right? Good and bad. But my question for you is two questions as we into question time. From what we know now, is there any reason not to believe that David's been sincere through all this? Or do we, is there anything that we've seen that says, hey, he's not sincere? Again, I'm not going along with the school that says the winners write history, and so that's why this reads the way it does. As we go on, when Ivory or Gabe or Ben is teaching, things are going to happen, and David's going to do things that are bad and are not according to God's will. And what's going to happen?
Consequences.
Consequences. Punishment. Yeah, consequences. As far as I can tell, David never did a single thing to try to kill Saul's family and take his throne. Now, he did fight with the guy who had not been anointed by Samuel, right? I mean, he did. His people fought him for years, and fought other people from Saul's armies. But he didn't try to take away the throne, get to the throne by assassinating the people who were in power. He got to the throne because the people of Israel decided they wanted him there. And that was what God had intended, I think, about 20 years before that. That's when he was anointed. Maybe because I think he began to rule in Abner. It tells you somewhere else. He began to rule in Hebron when he was 30. And he ruled in Hebron for 7 years, and then he ruled in Jerusalem for 33. Because they count the 7 years in Hebron as part of his 40 years as king of Israel. So that would have made him, they said it was 30, so he would have been 70 after he ruled 40 years. So back when he was anointed, it was at least 20 years before that. And so God has been thinking, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to get to, and he's getting there. But again, question is, David's going to do things that are wrong and bad, and he's going to own them, but he doesn't actually own any of these except if the King of England or somebody that works for the President of the United States murders somebody, do we give the President or the King of England or the Prime Minister of Germany or whoever it might be, do we give them a pass?
No.
We don't now. And it's clear that David didn't know this was happening, or at least that's what 2 Samuel tells us. David didn't know what Joab was going to do. And Joab continues throughout the rest of 2 Samuel, to be a man for David and willing to do anything to anybody that isn't for David, including David's son. But when we come back to this next week, David's going to be anointed, or not, I don't know about, the word anointed isn't used, sorry. He's going to be made king over all of Israel. people from all the tribes come and say, all right, you're our king. And that's what's the outcome of the Civil War. So let's go back to that first question, and I got one more for you about David. But the first question is, are civil wars worse than any other war? War's war, people kill each other. But are they worse? Are they harder? Or if they are, what makes them worse?
You end up destroying your
Emotional?
brothers and your sisters.
Yeah,
You're fighting family.
yeah, fighting family, or people that,
Emotional.
yeah. And probably what you're fighting for is not as important as that family in Civil War. I don't know. We've fought our bloodiest war was the Civil War, so I don't, and it's. But civil wars are difficult and bad in general. So I had not had in front of mind that when David was anointed by Samuel all those years ago, and ever since then, he had had the presence of God. The presence of God fell upon him. And my belief is that's why he was always asking God what to do. Because he knew God was there to help him and tell him what to do, or to give him an answer of some sort. And probably why he didn't ask God when he did some things that he knew he shouldn't. But that's so
Was humanity destined to wars against one another going back to, was this a destiny like where we were born to die? Was war a part of our destiny for humanity?
destiny is an interesting word. It's certainly a part of our history, and it's a part of our present, right? Do we have to do it? Is it that's destiny? Destiny. It seems like something you can't avoid,
Right.
and we haven't been avoiding it very much, right? As for all of our history. Anybody? So I don't think we're destined to do it, but
Well,
I was just gonna say, it just is a consequence of the presence of evil here
That's where I was
on a
going.
broken relationship with God. It's the consequences that come about when we separate ourselves from and rebel against God's purposes, which is, I don't like the word destiny that much either, but it is the ultimate result of the brokenness that is a part of humanity. And that's my thought. So you look at this whole story, and the word that just comes to my mind is what a mess. What an absolute mess. And this one gets killed, that one gets killed, power struggles, jealousies, revenge, it's all there.
like
It's all here. You talk about human destiny, my goodness. I mean, what a mess.
think about the October 77 war with Israel, and look how many people died from that.
Yeah, well, yeah,
God, so
yeah.
I'm sure probably a couple of 100,000 people have died since October, 2000.
Of course.
So it's hard, and it just keep going on.
Yeah, and it all lands at the feet of, ultimately, it's just in my opinion, I mean, and what I think the Bible teaches it all lands at the feet of rebellion, ultimate human rebellion.
Disobedience.
Right, it's just, you know, and,
Doesn't end well when you disobey God.
yeah, well, when you rebel, I mean, and God. And of course, you know, as we go, well, further in the story, you know, further downstream even from this, you know, the consequences of Israel's rebellion, you know, ultimately, that's further down the timeline.
It's not in this, it's not in this quarter.
Right, not in this quarter, but,
I feel like God, like intentionally, I mean, he lets, especially in this story, like lets things be a mess, like for a purpose, in my opinion. Like he did not want Israel to have a king. He was their king. They insisted on having a human king. So it's kind of like, you know, the idea of like when you're a parent and your kid insists on doing something that you know is wrong, but they aren't going to listen to you. So you just say, all right, do it, see what happens. And so I think God, you know, God easily had the power, if he wanted to clear Saul out, clear Saul's line out, put David in place, and have everything go smoothly. He could have done that in his own providential way, right? But he chose to not do that and to let it be this, because that's the result of, as you talked about, rebellion and disobedience. If you choose to not do what God planned for you is, he's not just going to make it easy for you to live your life that way.
And I mean, the other side of this is that Israel weren't the only players, right? All the other countries that didn't know God at all were, the other, you know, people around them were also real or whatever.
Well, the learning that comes from it, you know, like for us studying this right now, I mean, we're learning from a lot from the Old Testament, why the New Testament was needed, you know.
It's interesting that God did choose the kings, these first two for sure. But like you said, he didn't just jerk Saul out of there. But he chose both of them. And that's,
Mark,
yes.
maybe we're not meant to understand it.
Maybe it's right. That's one way to look at it. Another way is maybe we're just not capable, right? But that could be. That's maybe we're saying the same thing. And so the question is, is it destiny? Well, maybe we're just made that way, and we, as a people, as a species, can't do any better. But I think that's not what we should. That's not the way we should look at it. That we can't do any better.
Well, if you go back to the story of the Garden of Eden, he says, because you sin, chaos is going to occur in the world. You're going to suffer, you're going to have pain.
Yep.
The man will have enmity against the woman, or the woman will have enmity against the man, and their offspring will have enmity.
Yep.
And so, you know, Ivan's question about, is it, you know, inevitable that this happens? And I think, yes, that we're going to live in a world of chaos. We think, you know, our time of chaos is worse than any other time of chaos, but that's not true. There's always been chaos in the world, and there always will be until God reigns.
that's right,
Overall.
that's right.
And I would say also that we have a choice about what we do as individuals. Yes.
And also, this thought occurs to me. We are taught to understand and be enlightened in the New Testament once Christ revealed the mystery. So I'm wondering, this is history. We're just looking at a story, which I think you did great to make it a narration, because for me it's very complicated. But that's something that happened, and we look at it as fact.
Yep.
It happened. Whereas we as Christians search for enlightenment, and God promises it through the Spirit. So there's a different thing going on here than what we have been trained Do you,
Oh, I get it, yeah. It's our, that's why, that's where I'm going at, we have a choice. We can follow Jesus. Now, we'll follow Jesus imperfectly and, you know, a lot of, but we have that choice, we have that option.
I feel like one more element, you were on it and Jack got close to it, or the thing that nobody has said yet is, I went back to the garden as well and I thought these are the consequences of sin and what we brought into the world and Satan. There's another player and we know that he is prowling around like a roaring lion. He's not done yet with his work. And so if he can confuse and add to the chaos, and I agree with you. I think it is a yes, and the world is gonna be full of chaos, and I think Satan is part of that chaos. So then it comes to right from Ben to Jack to you to we have a choice. And so Satan would love to confuse us and help, and he loves that when we're like, oh, I don't know, and sorry, I just
I
thought
think
all the trifecta was happening, and I was like, and Satan.
Well, that's what I want you guys to, that's where that's where this mess needs to bring us, right? Otherwise, why do we study it?
Right.
Yeah, and the other piece, of course, is that God is working in the midst of all of it.
And that's
Thank goodness,
obvious, yeah.
thank goodness.
And, you know, he calls us to be about his work in the midst of all of it. You know?
And we know he's already won the battle. Oh, beep, beep. I think they're trying to get our attention.
No, that's the second bell, we're good.
Oh, that's the second, third, fourth?
No, just second.
Okay.
They hit me with the third bell before.
I thought maybe that was the third.
Well, thank you, and I forget who's got it next week.
Any me. I think it's Ivory.
Maybe it is Ivory.
Ivory.
Okay, then it's Gabe.
Big Gabe.
It's Gabe, it is Gabe. He can't defend himself, he's running the,
Got it.
he's running the, but it's Gabe, that's right. He's got the next three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're right, some of that war stuff, that's not easy. I think you did a good job popping through it too.
No, well, that was good conversation.
I heard the question.
Really good conversation. Well, it's the ultimate question about what we all struggle with.
So I saw you and I thought I would pass that on, so that I can do the drama. She said, you see Sean,
Yeah.